And I would like to echo Bill's comments that this crisis has pointed out why it's so critical to have a permanent and independent inspector general. I'd like to see it on a future ICAC agenda if possible, especially as Supervisor Slocum stated his support for it at the November 13th meeting. It's something that I think the supervisors could benefit from community discussion, which ICAC is meant to pull together and provide the support for something like that, so that we don't have the supervisors reacting and being reactive to crisis rather than preventative, and putting in place mechanisms that will, as Bill pointed out, allow people like the deputies who have issues with the sheriff or community members who have issues with things that the office has done. Um, and it's not just with the sheriff, it could be with anything that's going on in the entire office. So I would like to see that move forward in our county as soon as possible. Thank you.
There are no more public comments.
Thank you so much. With that, unless anyone has any changes, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. So now we are going to move on to the discussion and any recommendations that we may have in response to Judge Cordell's independent report. Everyone should have received the 400 plus pages of that report. I don't know if there's anything that county wants to share before we have a discussion. No?
Nothing additional.
Okay, great. So I first want to say, before we open it up, that I know we have more people online that we've normally have at one of these meetings, that this is, I am a little heartbroken over everything that's transpired the last couple of weeks, and disappointed. And I know this is a really contentious issue, so I'm hoping that we can have a respectful conversation about what's taking place, that any public comments that we have, that everyone, that at least in one area around this, that we maintain some dignity and have a conversation with each other so we can find a way and solution out of this. And I will also say that the other disappointing part for me is that I originally joined this commission in response to the death of Chinadu Akobe, and to see if there's something that we can do move forward. And to have that buried and to not be able to move, to have a discussion about the things that I wanted to, and I'm giving up my time to do, and have to dive into this, I don't have any words for it right now. So my goal is to get us to a place where we can actually do the thing that I think we all joined this commission to do. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any comments that any of the commissioners may have, or any items that you wanted to discuss or call out.
May I start?
Go ahead.
Well, first, when I spoke to Supervisor Slocum and he asked me why I wanted to be on this committee, I told him I wanted to give the sheriff's office and the law enforcement people within the sheriff's office and their civilian employees a level playing field. And I was for truth and transparency, which has been my 4 tenures on the Middle Park Fire Protection District as elected being in the county. So I brought that, as all of you here have brought your expertise to the board here. Just going through this, I'm like a 45-year public safety professional. I started in 1973 as a police officer. And first, I've never experienced such an outstanding investigation and report, which was done by the retired judge. That's the first thing. Secondly, really disappointed in the results of the investigation. Dealing with the sheriff's office in my official capacity when I was a federal agent under 4 sheriffs. I was very disappointed in what was going on within the organization. I look in the audience. I don't see anyone from the sheriff's office in the audience representing the organization as they have in the beginning in August. She stated that there were some false accusations made in the inspector's report, but she never afforded an interview with the inspectors group. So I'm just totally disappointed, being a career law enforcement officer, to go through a report like this. The only recommendation that I would make at this juncture, because I want to hear from everybody else on the commission before I give my recommendation, is I'd like to hear from the deputy and the sergeants association, their labor associations, to come up and give us a presentation as to what the issues are. We sat here from August on and we listened to the sheriff's office, but we really didn't listen, or the employee groups didn't have a chance. I know when I read in the paper or whatever that there are some grievances or perps that have been directed towards the sheriff's office, and the president of their deputy sheriff's association was arrested, which bothers me even more because our fire district for 9 years did not have a contract until we voted in a new board and we were able to work with the labor group. Never did we ever think that we would arrest our sitting fire board president. So that would be my one recommendation. Would be, I like to hear from the employee groups. That's what we did, and it worked out real well. And going on my 4th term and 3 terms, it was pretty mundane, and we all got together, and we still do with our district. So now I want to hear from everyone else. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead, Shirley.
Well, I have actually a question for legal, because in our resolution that created us, it says that we not participate in or advise departmental personnel on disciplinary matters. And it goes on about complaints.
Can I look over your shoulder?
Oh, I just wrote this up.
Okay.
But it's in our resolution.
Okay.
So the resolution creating our commission. So that's my first question. Of course, it talks about, it refers, and I've got it if you want to get it, refers to the sheriff's department being investigated and required in the law of Penal Code Section 832.5, which I did look up. So that's my first kind of question. And, you know, I'd like to know how we can facilitate really public transparency given this report and accountability, because we've got to, in a way, it's somewhat tying our hands. And I would like us to look to see what positive advances we can make as a commission on the details that we were looking at originally in the sheriff's department. And those are, you know, the basic things that it doesn't matter who's going to be sheriff. There are issues that I think we need to be looking at and making recommendations. And that can be on the voting, that can be on the mail, that can be on inmate programs. And so in a way, because I don't know what we can do on the independent report put out by the judge. But I keep thinking that we need to continue to be looking at how we can improve the sheriff's department, no matter who's in charge.
So just so I understand your question, it is how could you make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that might include adverse action against the sheriff herself if you're limited in a certain way? Okay, so before I give you like a formal answer, I would want to take a look, but the procedure that you're asking about, like discipline in Penal Code Section 832.5, usually refers to complaints against people other than the sheriff to do an internal affairs investigation. And generally speaking, the policy of the sheriff's office is that those investigations are done by someone of a higher rank than the person who is being investigated for potential misconduct. So I don't know that that procedure or is even contemplated to apply to the elected sheriff herself. That's my initial reaction, but I'm happy to look into it and give you a more thorough answer. Does that make sense? I don't know that that section applies to what you'd be talking about.
So then we can make a recommendation, or not?
Yeah, because you're not talking about like departmental level discipline against the sheriff. You're talking about maybe possibly other types of remedial measures, actions that the Board of Supervisors might take that are not the discipline contemplated in that section of the Penal Code.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Bill.
This is a total nitpick question, but is there, I mean, the report says, as of the writing of the report, the administration does not have an official organizational chart. Is there still no organizational chart for the Sheriff's Department? I mean, I kind of thought we saw one here, but and this report was just written.
My
returned.
understanding is that there's still a draft organizational chart. I have not seen the final organizational chart. There was a review of the sheriff's operations by Meliora, who was an outside entity to review that, and they had asked for that report and were provided with a draft. And so I still believe that there's a draft organizational chart and nothing has been put forward. We do, within our budget office and our own county processes, have a chart that shows who's in, sort of what rank and what positions exist, but we don't have a command level organizational chart from the sheriff that I'm aware of. There may be a draft or something
That's
new
old.
that came out. Okay. Yeah.
I know I also was sitting here and remember looking at the org chart, but I'm not personally at this moment aware of one, but I'm looking around online.
I mean, it sounds like there isn't one on their website, and so, I mean, obviously that doesn't add a lot of clarity. I just want to say I was pretty shocked by the report and the summary of the report, and then going through the detail. I was disappointed that the sheriff didn't participate in an interview so that she could respond to some of the allegations, factual information. There's a lot of specific detail that kind of raises questions about judgment, and is a real concern. I don't know really what our role is, if any, in terms of doing something with this report or making a recommendation. I'm open to considering that, and I think it would be helpful probably to hear from the public comment, and then come back and have a discussion maybe after public comment, after we've had our questions maybe, or made some comments, and then hear public comment, because there may be some good ideas that come up that way, and then discuss it after that, if we could.
Yeah, thank you. James Simmons. Yeah, I was just kind of curious as to what type of discussion were we to have, right? One of the first things that I read when, a release came out today for press and for public to be here, you read that, inviting folks, giving the link, And then underneath it in very smaller print, it says the San Mateo County Independent Civilian Advisory Commission advises the Board of Supervisors in its effort to facilitate public transparency, accountability, and public engagement with respects to the Sheriff's Office. And I can say, I'll just speak for myself, I haven't advised anyone on any of the actions that have gone over, that have happened over the last couple of weeks. So I can't speak to that. And it's already public record, so it's already out there. So I'm not quite sure what type of discussion I'm supposed to have because the actions have already been taking place or set into motion. I do believe with this commission, clarity as to what we can and can't do, right? I definitely feel like my hands are tied. I do appreciate the information that we've received over the last several months to give me a better understanding of the operation of the Sheriff's Office, because that informs me on how I could help, which is why I sit here. I don't want to go into the report with my thoughts and all of that type of stuff. I'm here to work to make things better. I will say this, though. I am not surprised with the findings of the things that have been going on, because that's exactly why I'm here today, because I know these things happen. It's not surprising because I've had conversations with other folks in law enforcement about safety checks with weapons and things of that nature. And here we have folks having access to weapons that they're not even graded out to be in possession of, right? So that's why I'm here. This is not surprising, right? And like I said last week, the Sheriff's Office is not unique to us civilians, right? We hear that, civilians and so on. We're human beings, right? And we all live 24 hours a day and doing the best that we can. That office is not any more unique to life circumstances than anybody else. And I think once we get over that, we can understand that there are going to be problems, right? We had a sheriff representative, talking about, there's problems. Yeah, we know there's problems, but we can't just have, the cotton candy and all of that type of stuff when we're getting these presentations. So to get more information, to know with more clarity what we can do, will be helpful, because again, I'm taking information in. It's helping me guide what I hope to do, but I'm really ready to get to do the work. Not having our retreat this past Saturday, to me, that was more disappointing than seeing what was in here, right? Because I wanted to get done what we said we wanted to get done. So I would also love to hear from the public, right? We sit here and we talk, but how can I provide a bridge to more transparency if we're not hearing from the people and setting up environments that are welcoming, that are safe? I'm not sure how many folks from the department would actually come here and speak about the things that we hope to with all of this going on, being fearful of someone retaliating, losing your job, or even worse. So, again, would love to hear from the public and us be able to facilitate that a little bit more as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. I think along the same lines as James and Shirley, I think it's just unfortunately, time is not on our side as a commission in the sense that we're still forming. We haven't started a work plan yet, and then this event happened. So I agree. It seems like from a transparency standpoint, the county's been really good about releasing the report so everybody can see it. So for it to go that direction first and us to bring it back with recommendations, I think we do need to take account from the public. That's why we're here and why we're formed. And I guess the bigger question would be for council also. It's like, I'm sure you'll keep us on the straight and narrow when it comes to potential pending litigation. There's a review still by the district attorney's office. It sounds like there might be a review by the California Attorney General's office based on submissions from the county. And so it seems like there's a lot of pending things for us to form a proper and informed opinion back to the supervisors. Will just take a little bit more time. But I think what's great about this opportunity is to open it to the public so we can hear directly from the public.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? Oh, go ahead, Alexis.
Thank you. I just want to say I'm very disappointed in the whole situation. And I think, too, as far as doing what we've been charged with. We've had to step back, and it seems like we're starting over. We're back at the beginning because we've been derailed because of this situation. Things happen. I think sometimes power may cause people to do things they normally wouldn't do. My opinion is not based on being on this commission. It's being a member of the public, being a mother, being a grandmother, and especially being a mother of a black son. I, like Kalima, wanted to be on this commission because of Shinadu Okobi, knowing his mother, being a friend of hers, not wanting it to happen to another mother, no matter what color that mother is, that to lose a child at the hands of people that are supposed to protect and serve is difficult. And so if I could be on this commission and maybe do something to stop that from happening to another family was my goal, and to have transparency. So with this big report is kind of setting us back. I also was taken aback by the sheriff saying it's all lies. I took that personally too, because this was written and investigated by a black woman who is held in high esteem, who has is a very reputable, well-educated woman. And rather than meet with her and discuss the allegations with her, you just dismiss them as lies. So I'm appalled at that and very angry about that. So I agree with James, I agree with Bill and Rob and Michael and with Shirley. We should probably hear from the public and then go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll get ready to open up for public, but I also wanted to say, in terms of the retreat, I was confused on what we would do with the retreat because we're advisory to the board. So anything that we would do, we would take to the board, and the board is focused on something else right now. I don't know if we would do a lot of work, give them recommendations, and then to do what with? I don't understand. I mean, I'm going to say, coming from an institution, when I started in my role at school board, it was an institution that was in crisis, had corruption, a lot of things when I first started. And someone told me, you can't, a starving institution in trouble, you can't reform it. You have to fix that first. And so I'm here in a reform body with a reform hat. How do you do that in an institution where its foundation is crumbling? And it's been that way for a while, right? I mean, another reason why I started, the previous sheriff, I had a lot of problems with too. And it was also non-trustworthy. I didn't have trust as a community member. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out, like, what is our role? Because our role is really reform and advisory of reforms to the Board of Supervisors to see if they can enact them. If there's no trust between the institutions, how are they going to enact any of the reforms that we give them? And that's where I'm stuck at right now. And we are not an oversight body. I know that a lot of folks want us to be an oversight, but that is the Board of Supervisors. They are retaining that oversight role. They could possibly decide to change that. I don't know if we could, that could be a recommendation that we make, but for right now, they are the oversight body and they hold all of those strings. And so it's figuring out, for me, what do we do right now while they're in the middle of this turmoil? What do we do and what role do we play? So with that, unless there's anything else, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to public comment, and then we can come back and.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah. There was a report that was referenced here It's MELORIA report that was referenced on page 36. Could we get a copy of that? Or is it sensitive or?
Yeah, that's the report that I was mentioning, the Meliora report. I believe that that's publicly accessible, and it may well be on the sheriff's website. But it is
I didn't-
publicly accessible, and so we can,
Yeah,
I can confirm that and then get a.
If I could get a copy of the hard copy and then provide all my members with a hard copy. He references under allegation J, 3J, disparaging comments, criticizing the consulting report, and I
Yeah.
just wanted to know what the basis of that was.
It's
Thank
a,
you.
It's a 700-page report. It's on the sheriff's website. If folks want us
Is
to-
it 700 pages, this consulting gig?
It's 689.
Oh,
689.
well, let me withdraw my request. How about a PDF? Is that okay?
Yeah, we can.
Can you forward us
Sure.
a PDF of it? I'm already carrying.
Yeah, we'll get you the link. Thank you.
No. The link, yeah.
Yeah, the
That'll be
link.
good.
Okay, I'll
Great.
send it.
Thank you. Sorry.
No
I
problem.
didn't know how
Thank you.
large it was.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move over and move on to public comment, so I'll turn it over so we can start that process.
Thank you. Members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 4, please use the raise hand feature on Zoom or bring a speaker slip up to the clerk during this time. You'll be granted 2 minutes to speak. We currently have 5 speaker slips. We'll begin with Jim Lawrence. You may come up to the podium and begin when you're ready.
It's on, can you hear me? Great. Jim Lawrence, Fixin San Mateo County. Good evening. First of all, let me say thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As you know, we all share a collective responsibility to address and resolve this unfortunate situation within our San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. Yes, the board has the oversight, and they have to move swiftly, decisively, and inclusively to restore trust, accountability, and effective law enforcement services in our community. Now, this process will require your engagement too, but as well, it requires collaboration and commitment from all the parties involved, including members of the Sheriff's Office. And that's gonna take us all to push the board to somehow get the sheriff to come. Because I'm too, like you, I like to see her address these issues rather than just in public saying they're false. So again, thank you for your service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker would be Deacon Lauren McCombs. Please come up to the podium.
Good evening to all who are present. My name is Deacon Lauren Patton McCombs, and I'm currently serving at Christ Episcopal Church in Portola Valley. And I'm a member of Fixin San Mateo. And I want to start my comment by saying that my thoughts and prayers are with all the parties involved in this unfortunate unfolding of events within the Sheriff's Office. Each one of us, all of the Board of Supervisors, all the deputies, herself, her Chief of Staff, everyone. My prayers are with them. That being said, the findings of the report that were released about Sheriff Corpus and her staff was extremely alarming to me as well to our greater community. Many state officials have asked that she resign in order to prevent further damage to the organization as well as to protect public safety. That was what she was elected to do. There were 12 serious allegations of misconduct that were sustained, which are now being reviewed by our district attorney, grand jury, and state attorney general. These alleged allegations undermine the moral integrity of the sheriff's office and the deputies who are dedicated to serving our county. I would appreciate it if you would recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they make the imperative decisions to have a completely independent oversight commission as well as a permanent inspector general. President Warren Slocum already voiced his support for that. Maybe if we had that in place, the deputies who didn't have a safe space to voice their complaints could have come forth earlier to prevent the deplorable situation that the sheriff's office is currently in. The time to act is now for the betterment of our county, as well as for the deputies who have been intimidated by our current sheriff and her chief of staff. Again, I want to thank each one of you for your committed work to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Trina Patton.
Good evening, Trina Patton from Belmont. In several meetings ago, County Attorney David Silberman did a presentation on the many different ways that oversight is done. And one of the things he mentioned was that the media can act as oversight. I didn't think that was a good idea then, and I'm pretty certain I've been proven right. I don't think we want the media to act as oversight. I have been working with Fix in San Mateo County for 3 years now to bring true independent oversight of the sheriff's office to our county, because I believe it can act as a preventative measure and not have to be in this reactive phase. I've mentioned several times that I think this body is a good place to receive complaints from the community, because as it is now, it would have to go through the sheriff's office. And if you want to complain about the sheriff's office, it's not a giant leap to understand why that's not a great idea and people might not feel comfortable with that. After reading this report where they talk about the fear of retaliation and intimidation, clearly that's not good for deputies either. And having a permanent IG might be able to make that a more preventative situation where things can get talked about and perhaps not be brought to this level. This is extreme. This is extreme. And it didn't need to get here. So one of the things I would like as a community member is I want this body to have some teeth, to be able to do something. I don't know what that is. I'll admit that. I will also say that in terms of the sheriff, I voted for her. I campaigned for her. What I want now as a community member is she, in her statements, has said that she, was voted for by the community and in the community. That's who she answers to. Well, I want her to answer. I want her to make statements on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Elsa Chafer. Elsa Chafer.
Thank you so much for being here, for being on this commission, and for being so wise and so deep in your questions. It's been really impressive. This is the first time I've been here, but I've been watching online. My concern is, I'd better go back to this, that the community needs a channel to be able to express concerns as well as compliments. And that community means everybody here. It means law enforcement officers, the deputies, as well as people who are non-law enforcement residents. I don't see that existing right now. And we do hear from the Board of Supervisors and their lawyers, there's lots of avenues of oversight. We did not witness that for the last year and 3/4. The deputies had to go vote as a union eventually. And it hurts me to think of what not only they have been going through in that toxic atmosphere, but what their families also go through when they go home at night and have all that frustration. And I think we need to be very sympathetic to that. And your role, I hope, becomes one in which you can advise the board on nipping things in the bud that way, not just once a year when you report back to them. And I'm losing this. yes, it would give all of us a channel also. I'd like to mention that Bob Johnson, who was police chief of Menlo Park, which is in our county, also had been senior in LA. And at that point in time, and he's now the sheriff of our neighboring Santa Clara County. At that time, he helped set up an equivalent version of you all, where they met monthly with the community, with the ACLU, and with business leaders. And he said it was phenomenal the way they could nip problems in the bud. And I would love you to have that charter, to have something much, much stronger, well, something at all even, versus right now where you don't. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more point for later.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker would be Raymond Goins.
Good evening. My name is Raymond Goins. I'm a volunteer with Fixing San Mateo. In regard to the sheriff's, the judge's report, it's lost on me that everybody here seems surprised. I come from a community where the culture of policing has been like this since I was born. To think that a sheriff was in the sheriff's department for 20 years and she was elected to become sheriff, and all of a sudden all these things happen and transpire, everybody's missing the point of what allowed her to do it. What allowed her to think that this was okay, and what was the culture inside that policing, inside the sheriff's department, in which allowed her and all these activities to transpire. This is why independent oversight is needed of the sheriff's department, because these things has been going on. This is the culture of policing, not only in San Mateo, but throughout the United States. Yeah, so to think that this is some random thing just happened when she became elected, no, this is a culture in which allowed her to allow these actions to occur. This was something that was probably endorsed while she was going through the rankings as a sheriff's department to get to where she was at. And along the lines, up to her ranks, she might have made somebody mad, and they used it against her. This is the culture of policing. This is the culture of all police departments. The transparency and accountability that the policing has and the sheriff's department has in this county is not the same as the transparency and accountability that they give to those that they incarcerate and they arrest. The sheriff's department, they hold a badge where they're supposed to have honor and trust. They're supposed to be held to the highest standard. But the standard of oversight is not being met. They police the communities and have transparency and accountability at levels for the community way severe than they hold within themselves. We have to hold our sheriff's department accountable to their actions, or this will continue to happen. This is not the anomaly, this is the norm for the sheriff's department. And this is why oversight is needed.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment on Zoom. We currently have 5 hands raised. We will begin with Pat W. Please unmute and begin when you're ready.
Thank you. So I agree with all of the comments that were made by folks who are in the meeting in person. So with that in mind, I don't need to repeat it, but so I will go to the implementation issues. The risk of repeating myself, and I'm speaking primarily to the county attorneys in the meeting. I also sent Mr. Neblin the Los Angeles County ordinances for their version of this body, the ICAC. And I want to point out that it should be read thoroughly and get it from Mr. Neblin yourselves. I would wish that you would. Particularly to that ordinance. No one is confused by what the oversight body can or cannot do. It's plain black and white. They can review all data or information or reports. They can recommend and insist that the Board of Supervisors investigate it, and the OIG can also insist that they are there to serve the role that the judge in our case performed. And there's nothing confusing about it. No one needs to sit there in ICAC and wonder what they can do and when they can do it and how they can do it.
You're at time, Pat?
So I appreciate the county attorneys in this meeting to get a hold of that. And again, for the ICAC to recommend that
Pat,
the
you're at
board.
time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker will be James Brown, followed by Attorney LSPC. James, you may begin when you're ready. James? You can begin when you're ready. Okay, well,
Okay, sorry, can you hear me now?
yes, we
Can
can
you
hear
hear me?
you.
Okay, sorry, the unmute button didn't show up right away. Thank you. So I just want to say that this started off, and I want to thank you for being the oversight for the Board of Supervisors, and I really think that's where it's needed. It's always good to oversight the sheriff, but the Board of Supervisors, I think, has contributed to this greatly. First off, this was a labor dispute where the sheriff took over with over 100 open positions, and within the first year or so, she hired over 75 deputies. And it started by her saying all overtime will be spent in the jail. And that was really the first of the union pushing back at her. And the county, Mike Callaghan specifically, got involved in that where he shouldn't have. And it just kept escalating and getting out of control. And now they want to change the county charter to give them permission to remove the sheriff. And I want to say that in 2007, this was addressed already. There is precedent of this. And at the time, Sheriff Bolanos and Sheriff Monks were caught in a brothel with an underage prostitute and narcotics. And there were calls for them to be recalled. And the assistant county counsel, Mike Murphy, at the time told the San Francisco Examiner, under the law, neither county manager nor county board of supervisors have the power to fire or discipline the sheriff. He is elected and accountable only to the electorate. That was true then, and it's true now. And oversight is important. I agree with that. But they are overstepping and they're violating precedent, and that's going to open up the county to massive litigation. And they're also ignoring the California State Sheriff's Association, who sent a letter. They represent every sheriff in the state. They sent a letter yesterday telling them that what they're doing is not legal, what they're proposing. And so I wanted to bring that up. And as far as Judge Cordell's report, I have firsthand knowledge of one area where she is completely false. And I don't know if it was intentional or negligent, but the real estate deal she refers to, I personally witnessed the interaction of that deal when Victor, the chief of staff, met Bob McSweeney, and Bob McSweeney had never met him before. And the judge says that they knew each other for many years, that they worked for the same company. The two companies are completely different. They're not the same company. So that area is completely false and wrong, and that entire report should be revisited. And I thank you. I know the other gentleman went 30 seconds over, so if I could just have 10 seconds to finish that thought.
No, we're at time. I don't want everybody to go 30 seconds over. We're at time. I'll be more
Okay,
strict.
well, I just want to say I'm happy to give it.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, moving on to Attorney LSPC. You may begin when you're ready. And the next speaker will be Lydia Rivera.
Hello, my name is Eric Sapp, resident of Redwood City. I want to emphasize that I'm speaking tonight in my individual personal capacity and don't represent the views of LSPC. A point about the California Constitution, Article 11, Section 4, Subdivision C says county charters shall provide for an elected sheriff, elected DA, elected assessor, other officers, their election or appointment, compensation, terms, and removal. When you look at the county charter, you'll notice the glaring absence of any removal proceedings. Accordingly, under Section 1 of Article 11, the laws of the state govern removal. In this case, the relevant ones are Government Code 1770H, whereby an office is vacated upon felony conviction or a misdemeanor conviction involving official misconduct, and Government Code 3060, which is the removal process pursuant to grand jury and trial. It's important to recognize that although the transparency of the independent investigation is applaudable, it is, of course, not an authoritative set of findings subject to an adversary proceeding. And if the board wants, the board, of course, lacks the authority to remove the sheriff, who is an elected official, and also does not have the power to appoint any other official to remove the sheriff. An amendment to the charter, I think, prospectively is desirable to provide for removal of sheriffs, but to apply it retroactively, as some have hinted, is the aim, I think would be a violation of the democratic norms of the electorate who elected the sheriff. So basically an indictment procedure is the only way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Lydia Rivera, followed by Noble Truth Seeker. Lydia, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. I actually want to thank everybody for trying to bring transparency to the county, but I would like to let you know that I am an employee not only of the county, but also of the sheriff's office. And that is not going to be possible until all the pieces are put together. Nobody, not the board of supervisors, not the investigator, took the time to come and interview the civilian staff that participates in the sheriff's office. They were biased by the complaint that the DSA presented, which is okay, and it's okay, they want to investigate it, but they didn't took the time to investigate everybody else that participates daily at the sheriff's office. And I also want to say that the supervisors have been protecting employees from the sheriff's office that are afraid of retaliation, because they're protecting employees that work with the board of supervisors to provide information to them, and they feel guilty and they know that they have done something it's not the correct thing to do, because they didn't do it in the open. They were hiding and they were sneaking to provide the information, because I am here in front of you talking openly, and you could ask me any questions and I will answer to you. And still tomorrow I'll be afraid of the repercussions of the board of supervisors, because my colleague has been taking it up against the sheriff's office since he has been having these problems with the sheriff, but he's taking it up on all the employees. So I will suggest that if it's going to be an oversight, it should include an oversight of the board of supervisors and the executive office. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to Noble Truth Seeker. Please begin when you're ready.
Yeah, hi. It's really hard to find the right words. I, like all of you, I'm really shocked and really disappointed and really appalled by some of what was in that report. I'm also worried that that report is turning into a rush to judgment. It seemed to me, I haven't had time to pore over 400 pages carefully in as little time as I've had it, but my impression is that there's a lot of he said, she said, they said, that it's kind of light on evidence. And I attended the meeting where the sheriff spoke for 40 minutes. I came in convinced that she was a horrible person. And I left that night feeling like she had some really great programs, and I felt really good about her as a sheriff, as an individual. I tried to pursue a conversation about the ways in which her department employees acted abusively, inappropriately, and are now hiding behind anonymity. And I can't file a complaint because I can't find out who they are. She didn't even bother to engage with me to find out my side of the story. She depended solely on body cam footage, which doesn't tell the whole story. She doesn't know what transpired before that or after that. So I just trust that you as commissioners will figure out the right way to proceed. But I really hope that somebody takes the time to find actual evidence and not people who, I think, as the last person was insinuating, people who have an agenda, who are trying to blackball and destroy the sheriff's reputations to run her out of town. And that's coming from someone who's had her own issues with the sheriff and with the department. It just seems like somebody needs to step in there and have
That's
that department pick things up.
Thank you.
Thank you. And through the chair, we do have 3 additional hands raised. Would you like to take them? Yeah. Okay. We'll begin with Yusuf Miller. Please begin when you're ready.
Yes, my name is Yusuf Miller. I'm with the North County Equity and Justice Coalition out of San Diego County. And I want to give a huge thank you and shout out to Fixing San Mateo for standing up, looking for transparency and accountability and speaking truth to power. And to this board, we have an equivalent board called the CLRB, the Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board, and we help them keep in step as well as they look for accountability in San Diego County. And I'm here today to support full transparency and accountability for this report. I mean, this thing is actually bigger than San Mateo when you see that San Diego is watching, Riverside is watching, Orange County is watching here in Southern California, and San Bernardino. So all of us having issues with our sheriff's department, like the young man said earlier, is that there's a culture of policing that has been going on for a very long time, for decades here, that we've been looking at it here in San Diego County. And I want to say that transparency is never the enemy. If there is a question about the sheriff's department, to please demand the transparency that she come forward and explain and demonstrate how these things are false. And lastly, we work with San Diegans for Justice with attorney Andrea St. Julian, who has a reform package for oversight boards, which it intends to give oversight board more teeth so they can function. And it's on their website, San Diegans for Justice. You can look over it and try to implement it yourselves, as we are trying to do in San Diego County. And lastly, we've been going through this issue for some time, and the only thing that we think that brings results is, like the attorney said earlier, a charter amendment and or a constitutional amendment to make some changes so that you will have teeth and some force. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker will be Aisha Barro, followed by Ilka Zaifon. Please, Aisha, please unmute when you're ready.
All right, thank you. First off, thank you. You guys have a difficult role of, having to weigh in on this issue. I'm here as a neutral party. I'm still learning and forming my own opinion, but as it relates to the role of this body, one thing that would have been helpful is for you to be able to weigh in earlier when the findings from Judge Cordell came up, because I feel like there were a lot of reactions to the report that happened, and it's kind of a little bit too late to undo that. Like as I mentioned in the Board of Supervisors meeting, to me, the fact that the sample only included folks that were complaining was an issue. I spent the first 2 years of my career in market research, and any finding is just as good as the sample. And the sample was mostly people that were complaining. And so that was a huge issue, despite the credibility of Judge Cordell, and I believe in her credentials, but the methodology was flawed. So I think that's one. Like I was also disappointed by the fact that the sheriff did not address the allegation. She should have. And also, at the Board of Supervisors meeting, the response that she had to the elimination of her chief of staff was not the response that I was expecting. I think with that said, the role of this task force, I think, should be, if the ordinance does pass, and I don't know if it will, because there are a lot of people that are in favor of the sheriff too, but if it does, I would want this board to kind of weigh in on, whether there is cause for the sheriff to be terminated, so that the Board of Supervisors is not fine in a position where they're just reacting but you guys can provide more objective advice, to the board at that point. Because I do feel like your role was a bit too late, since folks already had formed very strong opinions on the report and had already decided the outcome of that. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha.
Last speaker will be Ilka. Ilka, you may begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Ilka Weston, and I am also from San Diego and part of North County Equity and Justice Coalition. I am also an active participant in going to CLRB. And what I'm going to say is, one, the last man who spoke in person, he called it out properly. This isn't an isolated incident. We should have a zero tolerance with our sheriffs. They portray themselves as being above the law. Here in San Diego, we work with the families, and I'm very grateful that my friend Yusuf, an ally, brought me in. And we see the pain that these families feel when they lose people in custody. If our deputies are speaking up, thank goodness for that. And the fact that you guys don't realize how lucky you are to have a board of supervisors that is acting efficiently, not in reaction. Yes, of course, there has to be more investigation taken care of. That just is a fact. But the board of supervisors understands that the sheriff seems to be the highest role and should never be allowed to be abusive to the deputies, because that creates a angry environment which will affect people that are rehabilitating. I believe in zero tolerance with the sheriffs. I believe when they put that uniform on, a different personality comes out. We need better training. We need anger management. We need mandatory sensitivity training, and we need psych evaluations on our sheriffs. And that's probably what should happen right now. A psych evaluation on the sheriff, because she won't address her issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have one last hand raised. Okay. The Me Too moms, please begin when you're ready.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I am the national spokeswoman for Me Too Moms. Our website is metoomoms.org. We have been releasing the moms reports, which have to do with the decades of corruption in the sheriff's office that is resulting in wealthy abusers being able to purchase their victims, including children who are not safe in San Mateo County. We are a national movement of mothers who get more complaints from San Mateo County than anywhere in the United States of America. So we have identified it as the headquarters of the designer child trafficking operation. While we are very sensitive to and grateful for the good deputies who are speaking out, the Sheriff's Department has been filled with corrupt deputies for a very long time. The Karen Barker case is a recent example of that. But we can also go back to a grand jury investigation that says that 76% of child sexual abuse victims in San Mateo County are children. The department to investigate that was gutted, and page 13 of that report says children are not safe in San Mateo County. Mothers and children are being retaliated against by bad actors in the Sheriff's Department who cover for those who matter, as Michael Stogner used to call them, who are in tech, who are in real estate, and who are wealthy individuals in San Mateo County. And we are sick and tired of it. We want an interim sheriff immediately is our recommendation, and until this investigation is over. And we need our kids in San Mateo County safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I think that is all of our public comments.
What group was that she identified herself as, Madam Chair? Me Too Moms.
Okay, so I'm bringing it back to this body to see if there's anything else that anyone would like to share. Any other questions that you all may have, or any recommended action that you feel that we should take in regards to this specific topic. We also have recommendations for next steps as our next agenda item, so we can hold it there too. Go ahead, James.
Thank you. And it's maybe for legal. Can you give us a little clarity as to what the focus of this report was? Right, that this was a specific request about specific allegations that was going on, right? So, with that being said, this wouldn't be something where you would need 700 people speaking to the judge. You would want to speak to the individuals that were directly affected and would have some knowledge. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think, do I have a personal opinion about that? Yes, but I think that's for you all to evaluate and for the public to evaluate who should have been spoken to. Was it thorough? Should other people have been asked questions? Should, what role, if any, in your assessment of the quality of this report or the truth of it, does the fact that the sheriff didn't speak have? That's for you to decide.
I get that, but that wasn't how I prefaced it. I'm asking from a legal perspective, what is the proper protocol to handle a case like that? I know what, my thoughts could be, or who should talk and da-da-da-da-da, but is there a specific protocol when you are going through a situation like that?
I don't think there's a legal answer to that.
Okay, that's...
Yeah, no, I don't think there is a legal answer. I think it's for you and everybody else in the public to decide how much weight and credibility to give to the report based on any of those types of questions that you want to ask. But there is no legal standard here to follow or like a rule that needed to be applied to this investigation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Madam Chair. To that question, and then I'll go to you, Rob, but to that question, just in my experience working in HR, when we do investigations, they're confidential. You don't interview a whole bunch of people. You interview only the people that are involved in either the allegation or have evidence or information about the allegation. So that's what I've typically seen in my role in corporate America, and we hire independent investigators to do an investigation. It's a limited group of, or number of people that are interviewed that have direct either knowledge, either made the allegation or have direct knowledge about the allegation. We don't really interview character witnesses. So that's what I've seen.
Yeah, no, thank you. And that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from as a person who's HR professional who does things of this nature. I'm not going to speak to the whole organization because folks are not going to have information. And it's not a character thing. This is something specific.
Also, if the allegations are false, you've just alerted a whole bunch of people to something that could potentially also be false. Mm-hmm. So that's why the other reason why you limit the scope of people that you interview. Rob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All these questions and or whatever you want to call them, testimony, were they afterward? Were affidavits filed with this, and are they sworn to this information that's in the report?
I think subsequent to the issuance of the report, certain aspects that have been challenged were followed up and declarations were obtained. I can't speak to the specifics. That was conducted by the county attorney's office, so I can't speak to the specifics of that. But I can say that where certain allegations were challenged by the sheriff, there were follow-up interviews and declarations to some of those.
Okay, it sounds like a lawyer answer. Yeah. Were there the majority were done by afterward by affidavit?
Yeah, I can't really
some
say
were,
anymore.
Some weren't.
Yeah.
I don't think we can assume that everybody that was talked to is someone who didn't like Christina. I think some people on the phone were insinuated that it was people that didn't like Christina. There were people that were maybe had a disagreement with her, so they were the ones that were interviewed. I mean, just like people here in this room, there are people that supported Christina in her election. I know I'm one of those people that was up at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday mornings with a 10-month-old granddaughter canvassing for her. So it's not that my stance tonight is not because I don't like Christina. It's because I'm concerned with the things that went on. So people that were interviewed in this report are not people that don't like her. There were people that witnessed or had interacted with her with something that was wrong as far as her being the sheriff and them being a subordinate to her. Do you know what I mean? It's not like Team Christina and not Team Christina.
I was just asking what parts of this report, one, if there are any affidavits subsequently prepared after that they had done the accusations, because a lot of serious stuff here, you know, and I just wanted to know if it was done by affidavit also, since it was referred to at the DA's office, so, and to the Attorney General, so usually that format is usually followed up with affidavits.
I don't have personal knowledge of that,
Okay,
of
great.
whether or not that's correct. I know just from having read the report, it sounds like Mr. INJ's interview was recorded. There's a transcript, but that sounds like it was not the case for the other witnesses. Whether or not declarations or affidavits or other sorts of sworn statements have been generated subsequently, I don't have personal knowledge about that at this time.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Bill, were you going to say something?
I was going to make an uneducated statement, so I decided not. I mean, you know, my experience as a city attorney, these kind of investigations, they don't take sworn affidavits. They don't. Some investigators do tape all of their interviews. Some don't. And it's kind of personal preference. It's also based on the comfort of the people who are being interviewed. But that if and when the DA investigates this, or the Attorney General's office does, or the grand jury does, they would be taped, they would be sworn in testimony, and they would get affidavits or declarations if they were going to pursue a criminal proceeding or through the grand jury a potential removal, you know, hearing for trial for removal from office. But for this kind of report, Judge Cordell, Doris Cordell, would not have taken, you know, declarations or affidavits or anything.
So, to see if we can wrap this conversation up, one of the things that I thought about, and I know one of the people in public comment said, was that I wished that there was some outreach from the Board of Supervisors. We have 2 liaisons to us, just to have a conversation with us about the plan and next steps. I would have appreciated. So I think, again, I think that it's still a recommendation. I know that they move forward with, I can't remember the terms because I'm tired, but they move forward with having the community vote on a change of the charter. I still would like to get some clarification and about what happens after that. What the next, like, once that change of the charter is made, what does that mean? And if there's a way, like, continuing that transparency about what the next steps will be, if they could perhaps come here and talk to us about what that next steps will be, and how we can continue to make sure that the community stays involved. Right now I'm getting all my information from the various press conferences and the meetings. And, that's just not the best way to get the info, in my opinion. The other thing I would like is to continue to see if we can have Sheriff Corpus respond to the report, and to hear from her, again, outside of news interviews. That is I went through the report, and the report didn't move me. What moved me was her actions after the report came out. You have time to do news interviews, but you could not make time to meet with the independent investigator. So you had plenty of time, and the response was, "You are busy as sheriff." I have watched on the news like at least 4 different interviews. So if you have time to do interviews, you should have time to talk to the independent investigator or be responsive to us. So that is the other recommendation that I would like to make, is that we continue to try to make that happen. And I'm just throwing these out to the group for discussion. And then the last one is, and this is, I don't know, but to see what we can do to continue to try to repair trust. And we should, while they're going through all of this right now, we're going to eventually get to the end of this somehow. What are the next steps we can take to rebuild trust? Because there's a lot of things that we were all thinking about, and I was thinking about in terms of what we would like to see happen in the sheriff's office, with the employees, who it still breaks my heart that a lot of the people that we saw and gave us the tour and were great, that I then saw at the press conference with the union, and what it must be like to go to your job every single day. How do we repair trust with the community? How do we repair trust with employees? What steps need to be taken? And the last thing I will say, and this is more leading into the next discussion, but the he said, she said of all of this, to me, it would make more sense if there was an independent body, So that if there was an independent oversight body that is not being accused of political games or manipulation, or all the accusations that are now being tossed at the Board of Soups, if there was something that this body is not a political body, we have no ulterior motive except to try to make sure that we have a sheriff department that the community trusts. So all of these things, I came into this lobbying for oversight, and this whole experience has just made me feel more strongly in that position that there actually needs to be an oversight body. And so those are my things, and I toss it out to you guys for thoughts or comments.
So that resonates with me as well, and I don't know if it's this body, because that's not our charter, but whether the charter, if you will, of this body is changed, and whether it's the same people or a different group of people, doesn't matter to me. But I think the concept of an oversight committee, commission, whatever you want to call it, that's an independent body, I think resonates. I think the other thing that resonates is a permanent inspector general type of position, that oversight body could request investigations, to perform investigations, et cetera. And whether that whole concept needs to be incorporated into the county charter or not, I don't know. It might be a good idea, might not be a good idea, but it would give it would be less political potentially if it was kind of enacted through a charter process eventually. But I that whole concept kind of resonates with me. I don't think personally I don't think this commission is the place that people would necessarily feel comfortable coming and bringing complaints to, because it's a Brown Act body and everything's in public. And so it may not feel safe to bring things to a public meeting, for retaliation or whatever. And so I'd be concerned about that. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't happen, but I'd have to be convinced that that's the right mechanism. Whereas I think a independent inspector general would be a safe place, because that's not public. It can be, when it's reported out, it can be reported out with anonymity in terms of the parties involved. So I think setting up a safe procedure or mechanism is important, as well as having a public oversight body, I think are both good things.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, as I said when I first started, I think since the employees, as we all mentioned, are the foundation of the organization, they are the organization. They're represented by labor groups. They filed grievances against the sheriff's office, and that's why I would like to hear their side of the story. And since they are union organizations, I don't think they're going to have an issue with secrecy or the aspect of retaliation, since they've already gone through that already with their union president. So that's why I'm recommending that we hear their side of the story. We've heard the sheriff's office from August. We've sat here and listened to their side, and I think I'd like to hear the union organization side. I just want to thank Fix and San Mateo County for coming to all these meetings from August on, and you've got a broad breast of your concern, not only for the community, but for the organization, the sheriff's office, and the employees also. So I want to thank you all for what you do too. Thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead.
I just wanted to, just a couple of things that came to mind while folks were chatting, and one was in response to your question. And tell me if this is too much detail, but the board did adopt an ordinance, and it has to have 2 readings, recommending that there be an amendment to the county charter. And that process would, if approved by the board, result in an election on March 4th, 2025, which is a special election. The special election would simply ask the question whether or not the Board of Supervisors should have authority, and I'm just going to read it real briefly, until December 31st, 2028, to remove an elected sheriff from office for cause. And it goes on to list various items that constitute cause by a 4/5 vote of the Board of Supervisors after written notice and an opportunity to be heard. So after some sort of adversarial testing process before the Board of Supervisors. So that would be embedded into the county charter, and it would sunset unless there was a subsequent election or determination by the voters to keep that on. So there would be a process where the voters essentially voted on whether the board should be able to handle this situation through their processes to remove the sheriff. In a way, it's sort of a board-initiated recall possibility. So that was my attempt to answer that, hopefully.
So, and I think how do we determine whether there's cause?
The board would determine whether there's cause through a reception of evidence following an opportunity to be heard for both sides.
Okay, so the board would so it's really it's a board vote.
The Board of Supervisors vote, correct.
Okay.
The other that there has been talk about creating an independent inspector general so that there's a confidential way to submit complaints from the deputies and whatnot. that may be the solution, and that, for the Board of Supervisors to decide. But I just wanted to point out that there is an existing process, probably similar to what is in the corporate world, but a whistleblower process where folks have the opportunity to submit complaints confidentially to our Human Resources Department. And as there became an amassing, let's say, of whistleblower complaints on a particular subject, the board took action to commission this independent investigation through the county attorney's office. So there does exist a process for people to confidentially and in a protected manner voice those concerns. And then just the last thing is that because we have two members of the Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Mueller and Corzo, who are acting to lead up the public facing of this investigation, that sort of limited the ability of Supervisor Slocum and Pine, who are the members, the liaison members of this body, from coordinating with you in that way. So I just wanted to say that there was a little bit of an issue, a Brown Act issue, that impeded that sort of communication.
I just had a quick question regarding what you just said regarding filing a complaint. If there's a complaint filed against a deputy and it goes to an independent line, would the county in turn then give that to Internal Affairs to investigate, or is there a different organization that would conduct that investigation? I mean, are we essentially just sending them to another line and it ends up with the, other than maybe transparency to other people, but it seems like it ends in the same result. That's what my question is.
I think it gets routed to the right department, doesn't it?
Yeah, with regards to complaints that would come from members of the public about the conduct of a deputy, if that came to the whistleblower, I do believe it would actually be routed to the Professional Standards Bureau. But when you're talking about complaints about a superior officer within the sheriff's office, in particular complaints about a high-ranking official, those have a slightly different process in recognition of the fact that who's going to oversee that official, right? And so that's the process that exists within our HR.
Okay, got it. So that may be something that would either go to HR or to the county in some form or fashion.
Correct.
Got it. And then the second question I have, and this is probably just a lack of research on my part as well, but I'd be curious if in the event that, an AG is appointed in San Mateo County and they have the ability to subpoena, they have the ability to investigate and generally have a legal background so they understand chain of custody evidence and things like that, what disciplinary capability do they have in the event that they sustain some type of allegation in an investigation? Or is that something that would typically be referred back to the county to take action? Like, how does that part work? And that doesn't have to be answered today, and maybe it's something that we research on our own, but we're talking a lot about the consequence and the benefit of having an AG, but what...
IG.
Or IG, excuse me, sorry, yeah. Having an IG, but what would that actually mean from a capability standpoint in independence?
The IG's powers would be powers that are derived from the Board of Supervisor, and so they're not powers that would exceed those that the board currently has. So it would be a delegation of authority to the Inspector General to perform certain functions.
Got it. And that IG's findings would then come back to the board to make the decision on what would happen next?
It may differ on how this is all set up.
Right.
If it's set up in a certain fashion, but I can't say that I'm not aware of any way in which the board could create additional power in the IG beyond what it has.
Right. So it's more of a delegation of authority in that sense. Yeah.
So regarding the question about what happens to the whistleblower complaints, I'm just looking at the county ordinance code. So section 2.14.080 says that, and these are whistleblower complaints, upon receipt of a complaint, the office receiving the complaint shall promptly plan and conduct an appropriate investigation and notify the other offices and the Board of Supervisors or refer the complaint as appropriate.
Okay. So, unless there's anything else on this item, no? Move on to recommendations for priority setting and next steps. And so my first question is, do we want to reschedule the retreat?
I think yes. I think one of the concerns that I had when we had the discussion about canceling and rescheduling the retreat was that we would be distracted and focused on that because this kind of bomb blew up 4 days before the retreat, and that it would not have been a productive retreat as a result of that. Now that we've read it, we've absorbed it, we may have some recommendations, or that may be a priority issue, what the role of the body is, whether we should pursue an IG or whatever might or might not end up being a priority, right? But I think now we can schedule that and try to move forward with some of those priorities. So I would favor doing that.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Go ahead, Shirley.
Well, this is a little off topic, but
Yeah.
I would really like it if we had a representative, a liaison from the Sheriff's Department at all of these meetings. It would really, I feel, would help us out, because if we would, I mean, I have questions. And like one of the ones that came up in this report is about the childcare facility. And I just want to know, are we currently spending $40,000 a month for an empty building? And what's really going on there? So, because that's our money. I don't care whose budget it's in. But like, what is going on? How can we help out, at least by understanding?
I can only say that you could put that as a topic on the agenda, but it's not something we could dive in today because it's not agendized.
But my main question is, do we want to reschedule the retreat?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And everyone else? Yes? Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I'll reschedule it.
Okay.
And I just so I'm clear, I'm just saying my disappointment was not being able to get with everybody and to do it. I understand the importance of what was going on, and that probably not the best first place for us to get together. So I totally understand that.
No, totally. Yeah, we're just
and with that being said, with the time of year we're in, we're probably looking at after the new year, like getting this back on the calendar, correct? Because I don't think it's going to happen in November and December.
Okay.
Not for me.
Let's reschedule in January.
Okay.
Could we do it either before the 13th of January or in February?
Before the 13th. Okay. Okay. We can get help with scheduling.
That works for me.
It's just more of it's something that we're okay with doing. But we can get help with scheduling.
So yeah, we'll work with you on scheduling the meeting, because we also have to schedule the venue and whatnot.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for public comment on this item, and then we can come back if anyone else has anything they would like to share. Any public comment on this item?
Members of the public, if you wish to make a comment on agenda item number 5, please use the raise hand feature or bring a speaker slip up to the clerk during this time. We currently have 3 hands raised on Zoom. And I believe we do have 1 speaker slip on the way, so we'll begin with Zoom first. We have 4 hands raised. We'll begin with Yusuf Miller. Please unmute when you're, one moment please. I need to put the timer up. Okay, Yusuf Miller, you may begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Yusuf Miller, North County Equity and Justice Coalition out of San Diego County. In our CLRB, Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board, the counterpart to what you had there, we have a sheriff department representative that always attends our meetings for questions from the board, and also the probation department. So they always show up to answer or research any questions that our Civilian Law Enforcement Review Board has. So it would be great to have that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder that the agenda item is on our next steps. So.
Okay, next speaker will be Noble Truth Seeker. Please unmute when you're ready.
I applaud you reaching out to the sheriff to speak to you. I also want to add one more name. I believe that he presented to you recently. I don't know him personally. First time I ever heard him say anything was when he spoke to you. He was the head of the Patrols Bureau. I believe his name was Deputy Sheriff Matt Fox, and he apparently, per news reports, has resigned. I think that it would be useful for you to hear from him. He left a 25-year career in the sheriff's office because what has transpired in the last few months. I think he has something valuable to contribute. And my impression from what he talked about, you may remember the story he shared about the family where he visited the daughter in a bedroom and came back and told the parents that if they loosened the leash, she would make them proud, and talked about how the daughter found him over a decade later and assured him that she made them proud. That gave me a sense that he understood what having service to the community means for him as a sheriff. And it's heartbreaking to me that he's gone. So I hope you'll reach out to him. I think he might provide valuable context. And other than that, I just want to say I applaud all of you because I don't envy any of you on the difficult task you have unraveling was in the report and what your next steps are. I just can't even put words around the complexity this has added to your role and to your charter. So thank you for all of you for hanging in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Me Too Moms. Please unmute when you're ready.
Yes, hi again, National Spokeswoman for Me Too Moms regarding public comment on next steps. One of the things that we're wondering is that since this investigation, in our opinion, is just the tip of the iceberg regarding the corruption in the Sheriff's Department, we're wondering where members of the public, for example, our moms, can also make reports if they have been victims of Christina Corpus or anyone else within the Sheriff's Department who is engaging in corruption. Where would those reports go to? And how could those victims provide those reports in a way that they are protected? As far as evidence goes, one of the things that I've heard during this conversation is a lot of he said, she said things. We have victims who have sent us body cam footage, who have sent us Sheriff's Department reports, who have hard evidence of corruption, domestic abuse cover-ups, child abuse cover-ups, and it is very disturbing, very scary, and I'm wondering what your recommendations are for public victims. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker will be Ilka, followed by Aisha. Ilka, you may begin when you're ready.
Yes, thank you. Yes, this is Ilka Weston, and actually you're saying it more correctly. It is Ilka. I'm part of North County Equity and Justice Coalition, and we're from San Diego. And guess what? We're up here participating in this meeting because, as Yusuf Miller said, San Bernardino's watching, Riverside's watching, LA's watching. But you know what? It's much more than that. The nation is watching.
We have corruption throughout our sheriff's departments happening across the nation, with assault and abuse on our Black brothers and sisters, on mistreatment of people in the jails. I even heard somebody try to make an excuse that she needed to hire 100 people. Is hiring 100 people too hard for her? Because then she's in the wrong position. There is a concern. She should be asked to go on sabbatical, have an interim sheriff, and follow through with the investigation. Where there are flies, and you could fill in the blank after that. But there is something very seriously going on right now throughout our sheriff's department, all of them. And it's great concern. You guys have a wonderful, supportive county board of supervisors. I would encourage you to be grateful for that. I would love to see something like that happen in San Diego where they're supportive of the people. And that includes the deputies. So where do you go from there? Well, yeah, I'd probably reschedule your retreat because this is very serious and should take all your attention first. I am incredibly grateful for the work all of you do. I am thankful for it. It's not easy, but I would stand by the County Board of Supervisors and ask for a sabbatical while you do, and I might not be using the right word, while you do a further investigation and have an interim sheriff.
Thank you. That's time. Thank you so much.
Okay, next speaker will be Aisha Barrow, followed by Rhonda Reyna.
Hello, yes, can you hear me? Yeah. I was just going to suggest, in terms of next step, definitely take your retreat and have representation like you have from the Board of Supervisors, but also the Sheriff's Office. As it relates to, I think, the comparison to an investigation in HR, I think Kalima is right that it's usually just folks that have complained, but the difference being that usually the HR investigations remain private. They're not like divulged to the public like that. So this has become like a character thing, because now it's about recalling or voting on an ordinance, and people are assessing the character of the sheriff just based on this report. And I don't know if it was Judge Cordell's intent that this would be used as a character thing that would be in the public. So I think like if it's going to be used as a character thing, we want to see both sides. The complainants, but also the others, non-complainants. So that could be something that we add in this report as an appendix to make it more balanced. So thank you.
Thank you. We have two more speakers. We have Rhonda Reyna, followed by Bill Newell. Rhonda, you may begin when you're ready. Rhonda?
Rhonda, are you there? Last call?
Can you hear me? The unmute button didn't come on.
Yes, we
until
can hear
very
you
late.
now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My name is Rhonda Reyna, and I am a mother whose daughter was kidnapped under color of law here in San Mateo County. And going forward, I am extremely alarmed at the amount of subverted due process and unconstitutional power the Board of Supervisors is asking for. County Council's responses are dodgy and only cause me more concern. OIGs, as I've seen in Santa Cruz County by the untrustworthy Michael Janaka, who ran the cover up on Santa Cruz Police Department's brutality to my daughter's violent kidnapping and our unlawful arrests due to perjury by members of the San Mateo Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office, highlight how untrustworthy these OIGs can be. And listening to these comments, I'm hearing a subverted agenda, and it sounds like things have already gone into play. And while the sheriff may be in fact guilty of wrongdoing, there is no reason to bypass the constitutional grand jury process. She's under allegations. The 44 witnesses have not been identified. Those are only allegations. There are no sworn affidavits, and there was no recorded testimony as stated by Judge Cordell at the very beginning of this very sketchy report. So for this group who has a monumental task, we really have big shoes to fill. And I only would, hope that you contact the mothers, that you look into all the allegations of wrongdoing, not only by the sheriff's office, but this board of supervisors who, let me remind you, Sheriff Don Horsley is a past board of supervisor member, and Noelia Corzo has been depriving us of justice in the DVC council meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, last Zoom speaker will be Bill Newell. Please begin when you're ready.
Thank you. So what I've been listening now to the entire meeting, and what I've heard is from several members of your commission tonight, is that you support an Inspector General, and you believe it's a priority at this time, and that that's something that should be implemented. And I was even encouraged by Mr. McClure's comments about the need for a permanent oversight, true oversight, independent body, which he believes could be more effective than and non-politicized than the county board. So I applaud him for that. I would say your next steps right now is to at least get the IG on as a permanent part of your body. And that's also happening right now at the Board of Supervisors level as well, with Warren Slocum initiating what he said. So it needs to get on the agenda. I would say your next step is to tell the Board of Supervisors, with all due haste, get Inspector General on the agenda, get that passed, get that formalized, get that in place, so you have an independent body where some of the people who have concerns about confidentiality and being able to take their concerns somewhere. It sounds kind of amorphous to me right now, going to HR or the whistleblower in its different places. With a permanent IG, then you've got a body in place who can act on any concerns immediately. So that would be my my input, my suggestion for your next steps. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment in person. We have one speaker slip from Elsa Schaefer. Please come up to the podium.
Thank you again. And I should say I'm Elsa Schaefer from Menlo Park and have lived in the county 40 years. The sheriff does appoint a person on this commission, so there is that ability to have the back and forth. I'd also like to say that we need an IG, and I hope you very much will, in a rounding chorus we've been hearing, ask to have an IG who does have power, because that IG can track metrics over time and consistently, and can nip problems in the bud when there are issues, whether internally with officers or whether it's concerns from the community. Those metrics are graphable, and anyone can see them, but somebody has to be collecting them and has to be available to the community as well as to internal law enforcement to be able to hear them privately. I also really laud other comments you've made, but your charter yourselves, and when you help develop it in your retreat, I recommend needs to go beyond whatever you write once a year in your annual written plan for what your purview is. I'd love you to be able to take on issues that may not have occurred before that, but when you see an issue, to be able to follow that up. I'd love you to be able to advise not just annually or quarterly, I think, as is written now, but when you see an issue burst on the scene. This is unfortunately too good example. And I am shocked that we can be told that there is current oversight, as we have been told in Board of Supervisor meetings, because it did not take whistleblowers to do this. It took the press taking it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more public comments.
All right. Any other comments from the commissioners? No? Okay, so I think our next task is to get the retreat scheduled, so I will leave that in the Office of Staff to reach out to us and find a date that works for everyone. If there's anything else, we can reach out and let staff know. And with that, I will move to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Madam Chair.